Jerusalem, the holy city, the city where pilgrims came from distant lands to worship God. It was Passover. The streets were filled with thousands of people. Families walked toward the temple. Priests prepared the sacrifices. Animals were being brought through the gates. Everywhere there were voices, prayers, footsteps, the sound of animals, the sound of coins. For many people, this was the holiest day of the year. But inside the temple, something had gone terribly wrong. What was supposed to be a house of prayer had become a place of business. And that morning, Jesus entered. Jesus enters the temple. Jesus walked through the temple courtyard. His disciples followed behind him. At first, he said nothing. He simply watched. He saw the merchants. He saw the animals. He saw the money changers. Coins passed from one hand to another. People argued over prices. Merchants shouted. Animals cried out. The sound of worship had become the sound of commerce. Jesus continued walking. His disciples watched him carefully. Something had changed in his face. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't confused. He was grieving. Because Jesus knew what this place was supposed to be. This was the house of his Father, a place where the broken could come and pray, a place where the poor could seek mercy, a place where the human heart could turn toward God. But now, people were making money from the worship of God. Among the crowd was a poor pilgrim. He had traveled a great distance. He had brought only a few coins. He wanted to offer his sacrifice, but the price was too high. He counted his money again. Then again. The merchant refused. The man lowered his head. Jesus saw him. He said nothing, but he saw him. He saw every person, every struggle, every dishonest exchange, every frightened face, every person who had come looking for God. Nearby, money changers counted their coins. Silver struck against wooden tables, again and again and again. The sound of money filled the temple. Jesus stopped. He looked at the coins. Then he looked toward the sanctuary. The noise continued, but inside Jesus, there was silence. Then he looked back at the merchants. His sorrow became anger. Not hatred, not revenge, righteous anger. The anger of someone who sees something sacred being destroyed. Jesus walked toward the tables. People began to notice him. The merchants looked up. The disciples became still. Jesus stood before them. And then he spoke. "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." Then Jesus overturned the table. Coins scattered across the stone floor. The merchants shouted. People stepped back. Animals became frightened. Doves flew into the air. The entire courtyard erupted. Jesus overturned another table, and another. The coins rolled across the ground. The tables fell. The marketplace collapsed. But Jesus was not out of control. He was not acting from hatred. He was cleansing the place that had been given to God. And then, silence. The shouting slowly stopped. The merchants stood frozen. The disciples stared at Jesus. The people looked at him. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Some were confused. But some understood. Because they knew the truth. The temple was supposed to be a house of prayer. Jesus teaches. Jesus stood among them, and instead of walking away, he began to teach. He spoke about prayer. He spoke about faith. He spoke about hypocrisy. He spoke about mercy. He spoke about the heart of worship. And slowly, the chaos became quiet. People began listening. The poor listened. The broken listened. The children listened. Even those who had been angry could not look away. But not everyone was listening. The religious leaders watched from a distance. Their faces were filled with anger. They had seen what Jesus had done. They had heard what he had said. And now they understood something. Jesus was becoming impossible to ignore. The people were following him. His words were reaching hearts, and his authority was becoming a threat. One of them whispered, "Who does he think he is?" Another answered, "This cannot continue." They did not know it yet, but this moment was bringing Jesus closer to the cross.
As evening came, the temple slowly became quiet. The merchants were gone. The tables were overturned. The coins had been collected. The courtyard was almost empty. Jesus stood there for a moment, looking at the temple, looking at the place where people were supposed to meet God. Peter approached him. "Rabbi." Jesus turned. Peter looked toward the temple. "Why were you so angry?" Jesus looked toward the sanctuary. Then he answered, "Because they have forgotten why they came. They came looking for God, and they found only themselves." Jesus walked away from the temple. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the walls of Jerusalem. His disciples followed him. The city continued around them. But something had changed. That day, Jesus showed the world that love does not always look gentle. Sometimes love confronts. Sometimes love speaks. Sometimes love overturns what has corrupted the sacred. Jesus was not angry because someone had insulted him. He was angry because people were being separated from God. The temple was meant to be a house of prayer, and Jesus wanted the people to remember why they had come. They had not come for money. They had not come for power. They had not come for status. They had come to seek God. And perhaps that is the question Jesus still asks us today. When we come before God, what are we really seeking? Are we seeking Him? Or are we seeking only what He can give us? Because sometimes the greatest thing Jesus can cleanse is not a temple. It is the temple of our own heart. And when He enters, what will He find?